Okay, welcome. So, what we're going to be working on today is some observations and explanations of what's going on in cathedrals. So, in particular, I hope you were thinking about the purpose of cathedrals. You probably have a general idea, but sort of what's the feeling behind the cathedral architecture? How has it changed from the Roman? How is it similar from the Roman? And then be on the lookout for any new features. I'm gonna go over and explain those today, but hopefully you caught some of these new features that were new to medieval cathedrals. So with that, we will go ahead and jump into the explanations. All right. Okay, so this one I chose. This is St. Peter's Basilica. And I really chose this one because it's a very good example of what's called a Romanesque cathedral. So you could probably imagine that this could even be a Roman structure. It isn't. It's a Renaissance structure, but it is designed heavily in the Roman style. So you'll notice the Roman arches, the Corinthian columns, the dome. Clearly, though, we've added something that Roman domes didn't have. They tended to just be domed and have annuluses at the top. At this one, we've got this steeple with a spire on top. So a steeple is something that will kind of be at the top of the tower. A lot of times it will house bells, but it's supposed to be the tallest part of the cathedral. We've got the statues on the edges. These would eventually be called gargoyles. I believe they're depicting human figures in this case. Eventually, they'll start to depict monsters as well. But yeah, and then you've also got the roof truss shape there. It's because we've got like a concrete facade. We can't really see the roof truss itself, but clearly that kind of thing is going on there. So this architecture is very similar to the Roman, and you'll notice on the interiors feels very Roman as well. Long vault with a Roman arch, Roman arcades on either side. These Roman arches, everywhere you see, it's like a Roman arch is supporting weight here. And you'll notice it's a little difficult to tell, but in keeping with the Roman style, this is an extremely well lit area. Now, this is just a work of art, but it was designed based on. It was painted based on someone who actually observed it. Now, one thing to notice is that these buildings were meant to be even taller and more impressive than something like the Pantheon. So just to give a huge sense of the grandeur involved and to have these sort of long, tall hallways. And that is a feature we will see. And we'll actually see a shifting away from the Roman arch towards the Gothic arch to achieve that effect more starkly. So again, this is an image from inside. This is a photo, and again, you can see that there are windows in the dome to make sure this thing is very well lit. And we're not going to see windows vanish entirely. There's also electric lights in this area now, so obviously those were not available when it was built. But we're not going to see windows vanish entirely, but they're going to become less of a source of light and more a form of art. So these cathedrals we're going to be looking at are going to have a little bit more, just a darker feel to them. All right, here is Lincoln Cathedral, and I really like this one because of all the spires. So we've got a spire here, a spire here, a spire here. I think the spire is actually the small thing at the top. The steeple is sort of the slanted portion that's leading up to the spire. So this is in London. I think this is a great. Is this in London? I don't remember. I don't think it is. I would need to check that. But I lost track of that. But another thing to notice is you got a Roman arch here, but then a Roman arch there, but a Gothic arch at the main doorway. Long set of probably a long set of roof trusses on either side there, but two very excellent looking towers with spires on top of them. Now this is probably not for for defense, but nevertheless, very impressive looking. Here's a slightly different angle so you can get a sense of scale as to how big those spires are and how big those initial arches are. And another thing you'll see is these circular windows. A little difficult to tell what's going on with those here, but eventually those kinds of windows are going to be stained glass windows. And like I said, they're going to become more of an art form and less of a source of light. So this is and here you can even see the stained glass windows. These ones are still allowing a decent amount of light in, although there have been modern additions. But what I hope you caught from this picture was this sort of kind of a new way of creating like a big open space where you have a bunch of arches all meeting at the center of the room, like so, in order to give an open space. Not it's probably a bit easier to construct than a dome because you do have this central support, but kind of similar to what we were seeing with a ribbed vault. So this ribbed vault not being used to create a hallway, but a big central room. I believe this is called the chapter house of the Lincoln Cathedral. Salisbury Cathedral. Now this one, needed to include this one just because of how big the steeple is, and then the spire at the top of it. I believe this is about 300 meters tall. So just around 1,000 feet tall. Very impressive for when this thing was built in the medieval period. And you'll notice we're getting away from having Roman arch style appearances. If you look at most of the windows here, and you got windows virtually everywhere on the edges here, these are almost all Gothic arches. So the net effect of both the steeple, the spire, the Gothic windows is to kind of give this thing a feeling of being way the heck up there, and giving it a feeling of being really tall, I guess is a better way to say it. Okay, so let us go on to the next image. And here we see an interior of Salisbury Cathedral. And again, large, tall windows with stained glass, not letting in as much light. Still letting in a decent amount of light. So this one is not an excessively dark cathedral. Some of them can be, and like I say, you've got the windows on the sides as well. Hopefully you notice that this vault is kind of a ribbed vault, and again we're having that similar theme where we have an arcade on the side to hold up the edges of the vault on that form the main sort of long narrow walkway. Now that long narrow walkway we can see that is called the nave. Whoops. Did not mean to go on to the next one. This long narrow hallway is called the nave. Now we can see off to the side, to the left and to the right of the nave, we have another narrow hallway, not quite as tall. These are called the aisles or the side aisles. So those are two things. But we've seen this kind of structure before, where you have a long arcade, and this time the arcade is not Roman arches, it's Gothic arches. Same thing with the long narrow vault that's making the nave. You've really moved away from Roman arches into almost entirely Gothic arches at this point. Westminster Abbey. Now, one of the new features I was hoping you would pick up in this one. One, you have some rather impressive spires and steeples on the edges here. You can see the stained glass windows, the circular stained glass windows, like I was pointing out as well. But the main thing I wanted you to see was these structures. And maybe you're just like, oh, they're just there to kind of connect the steeples to the main body of the church, but maybe as you went through, you decided they had a different purpose. Now I'll wait till we have a few better examples to start talking about what the purpose is, but think about what they might be for, particularly what might be inside this area that they're connected to. Another image of Westminster Abbey. This one is in London, I believe. Very similar to the dual towers of Lincoln cathedrals with steeples and spires on the four corners of them. Again, almost all Gothic arches by this point, not really seeing much in terms of Roman arches. From the outside, you can see these more, or from another side, you can see these connection pieces here that are connecting to the spire, to the central nave area. So we saw, I think we can see one right there. These are becoming more and more common now. Maybe they're just kind of affectations, kind of added on to the church, but they actually do serve a purpose. So maybe you got those, maybe you didn't, but keep that in mind. Keep thinking about that. All right, and on to one of the most famous cathedrals, Notre Dame. And the reason why I spend so much time on Notre Dame, one, it's got a hugely impressive steeple and spire at the top there. But two, you can see these structures that I was talking about before, and they're a lot bigger and sort of more impressive in Notre Dame. So we can see these things on this side here, and they kind of look, I don't know, almost like ribs that are just kind of holding on to the edge. And maybe you can tell what this portion is, but this portion is a central nave. You know, it's a long, narrow corridor, and you might not be able to tell, but you're gonna have that Gothic arch sort of thing going on there. Now, look at it from another angle, and this I think is the best angle to look at it. If we imagine this as kind of being a Gothic arch, it's got the right shape to be a Gothic arch. Where was the Gothic arch going to be the weakest? Well, it was going to be most likely to tip over this way. Remember, we saw that when we saw the arch fail. It was going to tip over that way. And what you did to prevent a vault from doing this is you stacked up weights on the side of it. We called that a buttress. The problem here is that if all we did was put weight down here, these things would probably still get pushed out to the sides. Now, what we could do is we could have stacked large blocks up like this, but that kind of ruins the effect of the cathedral. You want that long, narrow hallway. You want that to be visible from the inside and the outside, and you don't want to have a huge structure. So what they did to basically hold up the arch, they made these little rib structures, and these things are acting as buttresses. Now, because they're just sort of these narrow pieces that are buttressing the vault itself. They're called flying buttresses. Okay, basically because they're anchored to the ground, but then there's a gap in between the vault and where the buttress is anchored, and then the buttress is just sort of a beam that holds up a portion of the vault. So you can go back and see the flying buttress in a lot of different areas. You can see the ones you were just looking at, but even on this side, you've got the flying buttresses there. Now, Notre Dame had some very, very impressive towers. Again, tall Gothic arch windows. You can see some of those circular stained glass windows. We're going to get a better view of those in a bit. But again, I like this one because it gives you a very good image of some of these circular stained glass windows. And you can see, here as well, you can see that these things, they're clearly windows, but they're not letting in nearly as much light as if they were just glass. So we'll see that from the inside. And we can see this here. That at this point, these windows, they wouldn't provide much natural light. So most of the light is coming from either, I think these are probably electric lights at this point, but it would not have come in from the windows. The windows would have been there to, be an art form that you can see from the outside, but they're not going to illuminate the space much. And again, you can see this long nave with a ribbed vault there. Now, one thing you're going to see it's kind of clear on the Notre Dame Cathedral. I didn't give this a name yet, but you have this area where you have all the stained glass, this kind of open area where the stained glass sits. This is called the clerestory. So basically, the sort of area where you have the top of the vault, where you have all the stained glass windows. Now, in a lot of these cathedrals, because they're so big, what you end up doing is you end up putting sort of a second floor up here, and that is the gallery or the triforium. And basically, it's just sort of it's not as impressive as the nave or the hallways, but it's sort of unused space that you might put something up there. You might allow people to go up there, maybe not, depending. It might only be for the officials of the church or whatever. But that's what that thing was called. So you got the clerestory and the triforium, very very visible in the Notre Dame Cathedral. So definitely why I wanted to show that. Just another image. You can see that you can see the side aisles over here. Again, we're looking at the nave. You've got the stained glass windows at the edges here. Side aisle on the sides. You've got the two triforia up here. You can see the clerestory, letting in, not so much letting in light. Maybe some light up in the gallery of the triforia, but again, very sort of the effect is to give this somewhat ominous, tall, a very imposing sense. Notre Dame does this exceptionally well. Notre Dame does this exceptionally well. Slightly different view of the side aisle. So this is probably when more light is being let in. Again, just wanted to show the sort of ribbed vault and they are Gothic arches this time. So you get a ribbed vault made of Gothic arches. One of the better examples of the stained glass window, how extremely, extremely intricate. You could get up and you could see these. This is really an art form to make these windows. But the purpose of the light outside is not to allow light in the building, although some light does get in. But it's really to sort of light up and illuminate this artwork that people wanted to show off. So, closer up view of the flying buttresses. You can see that they're coming off to the sides, and they're pretty narrow, but they do serve their function to hold up this massively tall vault. So that is it for the images. This was not included in your slideshow, but it does include the sort of labels. So again, the vault, the main vault, that is part of the nave. The arcade that forms the vault, that forms the support for the vault, the side aisles that are off to the sides, the flying buttresses that then go down to I guess this thing down here is called the main buttress. But basically, in order to give the cathedral kind of a more impressive looking feel, they just didn't want this to all be solid. So that was the point of the flying buttresses. We didn't talk about the pinnacles. Basically, kind of the spires on the edges there. It's basically what's going on. Another thing that this diagram includes, the clerestory, where the stained glass windows are, the triforium, where the gallery is. We didn't see this much, but I like that this diagram includes it. It shows the roof as being basically a roof truss. And even on the edges here where you have the slanted wooden structures that are going to kind of make up the space of the gallery, the triforium, you have these roof truss structures that make the thing out of wood, so that it's strong, it's sturdy, it's well supported, and it's not adding too much weight to this vault, because again, there's kind of a balancing act there where you don't want the vault to be too heavy, otherwise it'll push over those flying buttresses. You want that effect of having a very tall, imposing vault and not having it just look like a lump of stone. So that was the basic goal behind the what the cathedrals were doing. Okay, so that is it for this lecture. I hope you found it informative, and I hope you got all the terms you needed to get. Hope you enjoyed making observations of these cathedrals. I think they're very impressive, and maybe you get to go see some someday. Very, very cool things to go observe. All right, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.